Welcome to the show, everybody, and I'm here again with our special guest from Seattle, Kendra Long, a leading personal injury attorney who helps women who've been hurt or injured through no fault of their own get justice. And today, we're talking about how the personal injury process works and the stages of a case, so if you've been injured, you know what to expect. Good to have you on, Kendra.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Now, before we get started, if you've had an accident or you just need some questions answered right now, just go to injuredwomen.com. That's injuredwomen.com, and you'll get a free assessment, some immediate next steps, and above all, peace of mind. Now, so to kick off, Kendra, let's walk through the first things that happen when you need to lodge a personal injury claim or get involved with a personal injury case.
Okay, so the first thing that happens is you're injured, obviously. But when I first see people, they're calling me, they're asking for help. And so the first thing I do is an intake. And so it's really easy. We just talk, and we can meet at my office if you want. We can meet over Zoom. We can talk on the phone. I can come to you. I'm going to ask you questions about what's happened to you, how it's impacted you, how you're feeling. And these are all questions that you're going to have the answer to. I'm going to ask you questions about the accident itself. But again, like everything that I'm going to ask you, you're just going to know. So there's no need to prepare or study up or get out a bunch of forms for me. It's just a simple conversation.
So just be yourself, turn up, and you'll help someone, introduce themselves and just go through it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll flesh out the details together. So clients sign a retainer in order to hire me as their attorney. And once that is signed, I get to work. And I always tell my clients.
Just stop there a sec. So now a lot of people are going to be thinking, well, I can't afford to sign a retainer. I can't afford an attorney. So let's just start with that. I mean, what costs are involved for someone listening to this now?
None. There is no cost to someone hiring a personal injury attorney at the start. So I work on what's called a contingency fee basis. And so I take my fee at the end. I do not recover money unless I am able to recover money for you. And I take advantage of that.
Okay. And what percentage is that, just so people know?
Typically it's 33% for things that settle before a trial, but after a trial, it would be 40% just because of the additional time and efforts that it takes with a trial. But most things settle. So most of the time my fee is 33%.
Okay. All right. Okay. So once you've helped someone on board and they've retained you, what's the immediate next steps that you take them through?
So I tell my clients that their job at this point, after they've hired me, their job is to just go get treatment and get better. And so I do a lot of things in the background during this time. So I kind of do my own investigation about what's happened. I get a 911 copy of the 911 call. If it's still available, they disappear after some months. So sometimes that's not an option. I get a copy of the police report. I gather insurance information. I find out if there were witnesses that I could talk to that we can get committed statements from early on so that they don't forget or change their story.
All right. So just before we go any further, just for our listeners listening, so the first major step here is investigation, right? So we are investigating. And why, I mean, you mentioned to me not every personal injury firm is as good as the next one. So you think, when you were talking to me, that investigation is really at the beginning and the end of a case. The discovery work that you do at that point is going to determine the settlement level. That's the key part, right?
I mean, absolutely. You have to prepare every case like it's going to trial, even if it's not. And sometimes sometimes investigations turn up evidence that is later gone. So, for example, 911 calls, they often disappear after a time. Now, with a 911 call, you might have someone who called 911 to report an accident, but they didn't stop at the scene to help you. And so you now have an extra witness of someone who saw it, thought it was important enough to call 911 and you now have that person's name and phone number because 911 takes that. It's the same thing like going to an accident scene, skid marks disappear, all of these things disappear. And so it's really important that if you can find evidence in the beginning, that you preserve that evidence the best you can.
Okay. So again, for our listeners, that's why to contact an attorney quickly after an accident is good, more for what is on videotape and that is on audio that doesn't get destroyed within a period of time, right?
Yeah. And sometimes businesses will have cameras that are facing the accident site that we can get footage from. It's really important, and not just in the situation of a car crash, but in other situations too. Like there's just evidence that disappears. Sometimes the store, for example, in a slip and fall case, will correct the area that was dangerous. And so we don't have the original condition anymore if we send out an expert. So it's good to know that. It's good to have photos of that and to have that well documented early.
And also another thing that you said to me before the show is why this is so important. People are always going to try and disprove, even if your story is completely genuine, they're going to try and disprove because insurance companies don't want to pay and people don't want to be wrong. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. Or they don't want to pay, or they want to minimize the amount that they have to pay.
Right. So we want to prove with all our might that we are in the right. I should have been a poet, but I didn't know it. But yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So I do this investigation in the background. I talk to the insurance companies. I know that insurance companies often hound their insured, or sometimes the insurance company of the at-fault person will hound the person who's been injured. I think in this situation, I'll take that back. In every situation, I'm talking to the insurance companies. Once somebody hires me, I'm the one that talks to the insurance companies. Everything comes through me. They stop calling my client. So this is really important because I'm able to give good advice. So all of this kind of stuff is going on in the background while a client is going to get treatment, because that should be the number one job, is healing, getting better, getting the treatment they need, getting back to their life.
So just to sort of break this up into sections for our listeners so it's easy for them, once we've done investigation, or while investigation is going on, this is sort of happening at the same time, you make sure your clients are able to get treated without worrying about the bills. Yeah?
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I obviously can't pay my clients' bills. It would be unethical of me to do so. But I often get letters from insurance companies saying, we're not paying this bill, or we're short paying, which means they underpay what that doctor's charged on this bill. And so those are things that I sort out, like, why isn't it being paid? Hey, you need to pay it. And in fact, I think I was telling you that I had a client where I had to call an insurance company every single day for 3 months in order to get her surgical bill paid. Like, it was insane. Every single day I was on the phone. But that's what I do. That's my job. And I'm happy to do it. So those are the kinds of things that I'm doing with insurance companies. And I always ask my clients, if you get something in the mail, if you get a bill, if you get a collection notice, please let me know right away, because those are things I can help with now. But once it goes into collections, it's really hard to get it out.
Okay. All right. So again, if you're hiring an attorney, everyone listening to this is the sort of thing that Kendra's doing, but whether it's Kendra or someone else, this is what you should expect. So immediately after an accident, it's most probably a good idea to contact an attorney just to get advice, even if you're not going to hire them. Secondly, if you do hire them, investigation is going to take place so we can get the evidence to make sure your case is rock solid. And while that's happening, they're going to help you get treated so you're getting the best healthcare that money can buy. Now, once all of this is in play, let's just sort of timeline out for people what the next things that normally happen are. What sort of things should they be aware of so they're not surprised? So just talk us through some of those things, Kendra.
Yeah. So clients treat until they are either 100% better, they are back to their pre-injury status, or what they call maximum medical improvement, which means you are as good as you're going to get, but it's not back to what you were. So whenever we know when someone is finished treating, I collect all of their records from all of the providers that they've seen, and I assemble all of their records, and I create a demand letter. And so this demand letter will have all the medical information, the treatment you received, how much that treatment cost. If there's lost wages, we put it in there, how this injury has impacted your life. That is a really big part of a demand letter. I assemble all of this information. I take all these records. So I take the police report or any video footage or statements from witnesses, and I put it all together, and I sent it all to the insurance company, and with a dollar amount of how much we want, because after you finish treating, that's kind of when we can assess, okay, here's the evidence we have, here's what's happened. I think in my experience and from looking at other cases similar to yours, that this is what your case is worth. And the client either gives me a yes or no. That's their decision on whether they want to approve that number or not. So I send it to the insurance company. Insurance company usually gets back to me within 30 days. And, about a week, we negotiate for about a week. And typically from the opening offer that the insurance company makes, I kind of know like whether or not it's going to settle. I find that right now during COVID, for example, that insurance companies are making really low settlements. So right now I'm holding off on demand letters.
They know people need the money, right?
Exactly. They know people need the money. And so I've been talking to my clients about this and like warning them like, hey, these offers are going to be really low. But every time I get an offer, I communicate it to the client. I give them my thoughts on it, but it's ultimately up to them to accept or reject that offer. So we do that. Sometimes, most of the time, 95% of the time, negotiation is really successful. We're able to resolve the case at that stage. And a few weeks later, you'll have your check in hand and we'll all do a happy dance into the sun.
But not always, right? Which is what you're going to come on to. But before you do come on to the next bit, which is obviously you're going to have to prepare for court, okay, and trial maybe. I think it's important for everybody to know not every personal injury firm prepares for trial. Just explain why that is, Kendra.
Some lawyers will tell you right away that they're not litigators. Like they're never taking your case to trial. Like they will do all the work to prepare your case and to like prepare a demand for you and negotiate your case. But if it ever comes time to go to court,
they're not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're like switching horses mid-game. So, it just happens. Not everybody likes that experience. Not everybody likes litigation. Not everybody likes being in the courtroom. It very rarely happens that you would need to go that route anyway, but it does happen. So,
but I think settlement is also affected, in my experience, by preparing a case as if it was going to go to trial.
Absolutely.
If you're working with a firm that isn't never going to go to trial, they're only going to prepare a case one way.
That could be true. Yeah. I think that having optimal prep and presenting all your evidence in your demand letter is really good. It sends a really strong message, a message that like, I believe in this case. I am passionate about this case. I'm going to fight to the death for this person. And so this is what I think it's worth. And look, here's all the things that prove exactly that.
I was talking to a personal injury firm down in Florida, and he was saying to me that all the insurance companies and all of the opposing counsel have got files on everyone they're up against, and they know whether they go to court or they don't. So, and that affects how they negotiate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they do. They know, and they know attorneys, and Seattle, it's a big city, but it's a small legal community. We all know each other, and we know the practices that we have and that other people have. So I agree with you 100%. It happens.
Okay. So now, once you put the demand in, they've not settled, they've not agreed, how do you take it forward from there? And how do you best win or get the best outcome?
Yeah. So once I get their final settlement offer, like their top dollar, I take that to my client and I say either, okay, we do like a balancing, like it's maybe not as much money as we had hoped for, but by the time that we go to trial and my fee now goes up to 40% and we spend $10,000 on experts.
You've got to factor that in.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's slightly lower than what we wanted, but if we go to trial, we would have to get this much in order to get the same amount. Now, that's kind of a discussion that we have, and some people don't want to go to trial. Some individuals don't want to. They have really negative experiences, litigation. They're just not ready to do that. So we have a really hard discussion at the end. But if they're like, you know what, this isn't enough, I don't like this, F the insurance company, we're going to trial. So at that point, I file a lawsuit on their behalf. and we get the ball rolling. So, we serve the defendant, we do all the things that we're supposed to, they answer. Depending on how the monetary value of a case will kind of depend the path it takes. Cases valued under $100,000 typically go to arbitration, which is a less formal proceeding, where cases that are more than that will go to.
And if we were talking about cases within arbitration, what's the timeline on getting a settlement on that?
Maybe 9 months. So I tell people, just for settlement purposes, if you had an accident on January 1st, New Year's Day, you're in an accident. Let's assume that it's not a severe accident. It's just a soft tissue whiplash injury type of accident. By the time, even if we settled the case, it's going to be, I don't know, Halloween before you get your money in your hand. Like, by the time it goes through that whole, you do your treatment, we turn through the process, like it's Halloween. It's a significant time. So if the time we file a lawsuit, our trial date is a year away from that. So it could be several years after the accident happened.
So really, unless it's a significant amount of money, you've got to think about it seriously, right?
Yeah. And people are willing to have those discussions. I feel like people are reasonable. They understand that, like, people want something to go on for 3-4 years of their life, just like dragging on and on and on. But sometimes it is really necessary, because it sends a strong message to insurance companies that we don't tolerate this kind of behavior in our community, and we deserve more. Our legal rights are worth more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's great advice. Look, for everyone listening to this today, if you've got a question or you'd like to get some advice, if you go to injuredwomen.com, that's injuredwomen.com, you'll get a free case assessment, and you'll be able to get a plan of action and some immediate next steps that I think will make you feel a whole lot better. So look, Kendra, thanks again. We're going to have you back on soon. But until then, stay safe.
Thank you.
All right. Speak then.